Hello, everyone, and welcome to the World Class Mentors. This is a radio show and podcast celebration of people who have achieved world class status through sharing their stories and honoring their mentors. Today, we have a fabulous guest. I'm very excited to present you with someone that I love dearly just because. Gina Hinojosa. How are you, Gina?
I'm good. How are you, Tony?
I'm doing fine, thank you. We've been keeping up with you via Facebook, via LinkedIn. I mean, you're busy all the time. I'm so impressed. By the way,
Well,
everyone,
it's yeah, I'm real busy, but doing great things. I have a lot of fun with what I do, so I'm happy to do it.
I think that's what makes you stand out above the others, Gina, is that you're obviously having a great time. Gina graduated from the University of Texas in Austin with an honors government degree, and then she went to George Washington Law School and got her law degree. And that it seems like forever, doesn't it? It was really
Yeah, it
recent.
does.
You ran for the Austin Independent School District. You were in the school board primarily because you were so frustrated. And I remember that when the district was trying to close a bunch of schools, and
Right,
including the school that you and your son and even my granddaughters were at, and you were like, nope, this isn't going to happen. And you
right.
were an average person, a mom who took up arms and went and got yourself elected to an at-large position on the board in 2012 and ended up being the president of the school board in 2015. So congratulations, Gina. That's how I wish people would react instead of just putting little notes here and there. They need to take
Mhm.
action and go do it. Yeah, what motivated you at that time?
Well, I did have a kindergartner, but I also had a new baby, and I half jokingly say sleep deprivation from a newborn is what led me to do that. But no, I had a 3-month-old baby. Pablo was 3 months old when I ran, but it was just this frustration and really kind of got mad at myself because I was sick of arguing with the television or the radio news about what was happening. And I think, like many of us do, we see what's going on in the world, we hear what's going on in the world, and I would just start talking back, which doesn't accomplish anything. And so I thought, um, this is something that's worth my time. But before I came to that conclusion, actually getting into already mentors, I had a mentor who was already on the school board. I didn't quite understand that she was my mentor, but she was a school board member. Her name is Annette Lavoie, and she was the champion of issues that I cared about. And so I really admired her. And she reached out to me when she decided she wasn't going to run again. And she said, I think you should do it. At first, I thought that was crazy. I didn't see myself as a politician, and then also because I had a newborn. But she then ended up talking to my husband too. She saw him somewhere and said, "I think Gina should do this," and he thought it was a good idea. And so between the two of them, I decided to run. And really, she mentored me along the way through that election, and then even in the beginning when I got onto the school board.
It's so important that we do find people like that, and I can really see the benefit, and I see how well she did with you. We earlier this month we interviewed Donna Roth, who's running for a judge here in Harris County. And it was pretty much the same story. As she found someone who she really truly believed in, and helped her. Just we leverage
Mm-hmm.
off of the ones whose shoulders we're standing on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but what makes you different is that you are highly approachable. I know there's always some kind of a stigma around politicians, but you're not a politician. You really are someone who cares for what's happening, and I think that's the power that you've got. is you're someone that people
Well,
can
thank you,
approach and
Tony.
go to and ask things.
Well,
My
thank you.
pleasure.
Part of I liked the campaigning, and I think part of why I really appreciated going out and talking to people and meeting with people is because I had been home with my baby for months, and I wanted that adult interaction and talking about policy and things that were happening in the community. It also was great because it reminded me why I live in the community I live in. I chose Austin. I chose to stay in Austin when I came to college here, and it was because of the people who, and maybe this happens everywhere, but I suspect that we have a kind of stronger strain of it. People who really care about the community and are willing to put in the work to make this community a better place. And I was reconnected with that when I started running and learning about all the great things that people were working on in this community to make it a better place. And so I did like the campaigning part of it because I was able to meet just lots of wonderful people.
Well, not only did you save the schools from being closed, Gina, but you also, one of your biggest achievements has been that AISD, like every school passed the public education standards and they met the accountability standards for the very first time. I mean, that's
well, it was
huge.
every high school.
Every
high school. There was one high school in particular that had been in the press a lot, and we had to really spend substantial time focused on that school. It was a heavy lift, and that school, for the first time in history, that since we started keeping count, that school unfortunately had not passed academic standard requirements of the state. And so we were all focused, and it wasn't in no way, shape, or form was it just me. It was a team effort. Once I was school board president, my biggest kind of time commitment really seemed to be trying to find a way forward on a school board so that we could find common interests and work as a team. Because too often I think it happens that people have different interests and nothing gets done because everybody's working in different directions. And I think it's important that people stay true to what their beliefs are and to the community they represent. And those won't always be the same as the other people you're working with. But at the same time, there's a lot that we all agree on that we want to achieve. And so it had been my philosophy when I was on the school board, let's figure out what those things are and let's try to really work and focus. And it takes a lot of relationship building and constant, it's like a marriage, and constant work to keep the relationship strong so that you can be a strong team. And so it was a team effort. Definitely the successes we had on the school board were a team effort.
You're amazing. By the way, in a short time since you've been elected and since you've been serving on the school board, you've led some pretty successful efforts. For example, workers' rights, and you testified at the legislature in support of increasing funding. That's a huge accomplishment.
Well, they haven't increased it. They haven't increased it like they should, and that's actually what was my motivation for not running for re-election for the school board and instead running to be in the Texas legislature, because the state makes the decisions on how much money our schools get.
So in effect, you're moving up. So you went from the school board, and in March of 2016, you defeated 5 other candidates to fill the State House District 49 position. Congratulations on that. So
Thank you.
So this is a much bigger scale than the school board, is it not?
Well, it's just different. So on the school board, what I loved about it was every single day I had an opportunity to help kids make a difference in the lives of kids. The legislature, because it's more removed from the workings of government, we're kind of at a higher level. It's the policy doesn't have that immediate effect, right? Like, for instance, right now we're not in session. But the flip side to that is that we can affect more people. Now, the biggest challenge I have with that, though, is that I'm in the minority party I'm a Democrat in a heavily Republican legislature. And so there are some things that will be close to impossible to achieve that I care about while that is the case. But I have found that there are issues, again, just like when working on the school board, there are some issues that we can all get behind that make a difference in people's lives. And so I kind of have 3 buckets of things that I work on in the legislature. One bucket is the legislation that I know I can get passed if I work it hard. Another bucket of work that I do is things that they're just the right thing to do, regardless of whether or not they're ever going to get passed. It's just the right thing to do. And then the final one really is beginning the work that I believe eventually will get passed. It's not going to happen maybe this session, probably not this session, maybe not next session, but you begin to educate people and you begin to move the ball forward. So it's important to me to really make sure that I'm mindful of making progress or doing all 3 of those things.
I love the way you break that down. I mean, as an ex-project manager myself, that's exactly how you have to work it. But you're affecting people's lives all over the state, and I love the way that you separate it into what you can do now, what you need to plan for, and what you hope to at least get started. That's that's the way that it has to be, because you're under a time constraint. And then now, Gina, are you thinking of obviously rerunning to the House of Reps, but are you thinking of escalating that into a career position of another office?
Well, and I am running for re-election right now, and so my election will be in November. And I do have an opponent. So I am running for another 2 years, really because our terms are only 2 years long. We're kind of always running, which I think is a good thing, because it makes you be in close contact with the community constantly. But I love being the representative for Central Austin. I mean, I still am in awe, really, that I get to do that. And I mean, this is what I want to do. I'll never say never, right? Because just like I never thought I would run for the school board or the state legislature. You don't know what the future holds. But I'm really happy being here. I just finished my freshman term, and I learned a lot that first term that I want to take back and apply to do a better job even next session. And I just think with the experience that you get from each session, I'm hoping to be more effective next session. So there's a lot to do, and I represent a community that is more than willing and almost has an expectation to do the work hand in hand with me, right? Advocates on all sorts of issues, from education to housing to environment, to are ready and wanting to be part of the work. And so I love doing that. Again, it's an opportunity to work as a team, which I've always liked. My first legal job was representing labor unions, and what I loved about that was the unions I represented, often they knew as much about the law as I did, because of just the nature of that work. And so it was never me sitting on one end of the desk and telling a client on the other end, this is what you need to do. It was us figuring it out together. And I've always liked that teamwork approach to problem solving. I think that's kind of where I've figured out that's where I thrive.
I agree wholeheartedly. By the way, you've helped the Catholic Charities. You've been in the Office of Immigration Concerns. You've you work part-time for temporal legal aid. You really have a grassroots concept that that just springboards from there into bigger and better things. And so I notice that you've always maintained your connection with all of these grassroots organizations. And by the way, congratulations! I saw your pictures on a very effective Pride Day. That looked like so much fun. I wish I had been there.
It was great.
Yeah, the LGBTQ community is near and dear to my heart, and so I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping kids that really do need to be heard and understood. So, now listen, you've got a whole bunch more stuff coming up. I don't know how you do all of this. Love your husband and John.
Thank you.
And then of course Mateo looks like he's almost your height now. What is going on there?
He is. Yeah, he's gone through a growth spurt. Both my kids, I'm just finding right before school starts, nothing fits them. They just went through a major growth spurt. I got to get them some clothes for school.
Back over to Target, right? Where everybody else goes.
That's right.
Now, I know John worked for one of my heroes, which was Governor Ann Richards, and he must have learned just a whole lot from that. That was quite an opportunity.
Yes, and he's one of my closest advisors, and I think it's based on his work there. He also had worked in the Senate for Senator Rodney Ellis, and he was chief of staff for him when we first met. And so I had not, some people, or a lot of people actually who run for the legislature, they have been staffers or lobbyists or something in the Capitol, and I had never done actually worked in the Capitol, and so he's been a great advisor to me too, as I was figuring out the ropes.
I can only imagine the ropes that you're having to go through. Yeah. I think of it as a big rope bridge, and it's always shaky, no matter what.
Yeah, that's right.
And you've got this giant chasm to try to connect the two sides together. I'm totally in awe of you. Trust me. Now, talking about family, you do come from a wonderful family that comes from the Rio Grande Valley, and I know your father is well known and loved. You want to talk a little bit about Gilbert?
Yeah, well, and he is my mentor now on lots of issues, and since I got elected to the school board now, but I'll say that even as a daughter of a politician, I didn't want to be a politician when I grew up, and I made my husband promise to never run for office, actually, before we got married. But he did make me promise. But I never saw myself running for office, and the reason why was because I often felt like my dad belonged to everybody. He wasn't just my dad. He had responsibilities to everybody, and so I felt like it took him away from being just my dad. And so I loved my dad, and I enjoyed his company, and I didn't want that for my family. And so a lot of legislators have full-time jobs and then do this legislative work, but I've been lucky to be able to not do that. And so I do this legislative work, but I'm also just mom, and I really work hard to prioritize family because of the experience I had as the daughter of a politician. So, it doesn't work for everyone, and we even have single moms who are legislators, and they somehow make it work. But for me, I feel very fortunate to be able to do this way. But let me say about my dad, the way that he's but his mentoring has been invaluable to me. I mean, I remember one time when I was on the school board when I first started, and I was just kind of trying to figure out how to do things. I had first month I was in office, I had a really tough decision to make. And there were people on both sides, and it was one of those issues that's in the paper that everybody has an opinion on it. It was very high profile, and there were pretty substantial consequences to it. And I called him. I said, I don't know what to do. I'm stuck. I'm torn. I just don't know what to do. And he gave me this great advice that I used to today, and he said, look, this is not your decision to make alone. You called together community members, people you respect and trust, and you guys figure this out together. And that's exactly what I did. And I believe I made the right decision, and it was because I didn't think I had all the answers, so I shared I shared the burden really of the decision with the community I represented. And so I try to do that, and that connection to grassroots really comes from my experience watching him as a politician. The way he always kept community close, was always part of community in the work that he did, even despite his resume, his bootstrap story. He never presumed to have all the answers. And so that is how I try to do the work that I do in office.
Well, you do a great job, Gina, and paying regards and honor to your mother as well, who I think the world of her, and have ever since we were in high school together. So I absolutely love her.
Yeah,
and she's still in Austin too, right?
Yeah, she's in Austin, which is really nice to have her close now that I have a family. And she was a trailblazer herself, and a litigator, and has just a strong work ethic, and taught me a lot as well.
And I love having Grandma around. I know.
Yeah, it's great.
To go with Grandma, I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
Gina. So let me ask you this. We've got a couple of minutes left, and I'd like to share. You've just got such a brilliant future, and I'm looking forward to watching you bloom and grow and keep going, because you have so much to offer. And I need to say thank you for that. You have renewed my impression of people who are in office. You have given me hope that we've got something better coming than what we've got now. And that is very important to say, because there's so few people that, like you, are just there because your heart says you need to do something better. And that really means a lot to us. Hey, listen, you have our last question of the day is we always ask our guests how they plan to pay it forward, and what kind of legacy would you like to leave?
Well, education is important to me. And, my story would not have been possible had it not been for the educational opportunities of my parents. And so I try to focus on education issues. I do focus on education issues, and figuring out how we can make policy to give all kids an opportunity to achieve their maximum potential. I grew up in South Texas, where there's a lot of poverty, but still a lot of kids were able to succeed despite that poverty. They had family supports. Parents who said, I might not be able to understand the work you have to do, but I know that you better do your homework, right? I think that we have a challenge, not just having kids in poverty succeed, but we have a challenge with kids whose lives are in chaos, whose parents aren't available, at-risk kids, right? Maybe who are not getting that kind of guidance or support, whether for whatever reason, from their families to achieve. And these are the kids that I think we really need to figure out, how do we keep these kids from ending up probably in the criminal justice system if we don't do something to provide them the supports that they need to achieve. And so that's where I focus a lot of my time and energy. I went to public school in Brownsville, Texas. All schools were Title I schools. Everybody was on free and reduced lunch. I know poor kids can achieve. That's not news to me. But I mostly worry about the ones who are not just poor, but who are alone. So that's the legacy I hope to achieve. It's not cheap. We can't get this done on the cheap. Our kids are worth the investment, and I'm working to figure out how we can find the support to really invest what we need to invest in our kids.
Love it. Absolutely love it. Thank you, Gina, so much. Thanks again for being on our show. You have made me smile. By the way, folks, my pleasure. If you'd like to become a sponsor for the World Class Mentors, just go to theworldclassmentors.com and fill out the contact form. Our producers will be directly in contact with you. I'd also like to say thank you to Gina for being world class and being the mentor that she is. We are always looking for other mentors, so be our guest. If you know someone who is world class in your opinion, or would like to share your story with folks who are world class, like the rest of our guests, please go to theworldclassmentors.com and fill out your application. Apply to be our guest. Again, thank you to our sponsor, KDDM, and we want to say thank you to Gina. And again, you guys, everyone is world class at something. Let's try to get the word out and share your stories. Change the world one step at a time.